As the colors change to fall, the shows just keep getting brighter on Global Voice Broadcasting. Shows about everything that matters to you, from love, living, and life. If you're talking about it, we're talking about it this fall on Global Voice Broadcasting. Don't miss a second.
I highly recommend Ms. Hicks. Her books, her CDs are encouraging.
I bought her book, A Hill to Climb. She's a very inspirational speaker.
And I look forward to one day being able to work with her.
Your power lies within you. Let it loose.
Aspiration, inspiration, motivation, edification, determination. These are the keys of life success, brought to you by none other than award-winning author, motivational lecturer, business consultant, and much more as she gets you aimed to your purpose. And now, ladies and gentlemen, young and elder, from Hollywood to the entire world, here is your host of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, Louise Hicks, along with her co-host, yours truly, Kennon Wesley Mason.
An Alaska attorney who has gone up against a drug giant and won has a new target. Jim Gottstein is taking on psychiatry in Alaska for over-prescribing medicine to children. CL2's Rhonda McBride joins us with more on that.
Well, Megan, you may remember that Jim Gottstein was the attorney who forced Eli Lilly to pay more than $1 billion in settlements over the antipsychotic drug Zyprexa. He also heads up a group called the Law Project for Psychiatric Rights, which filed the lawsuit, which it claims is disabling children for life. A growing number of children are prescribed psychiatric drugs, and a growing number of mental health advocates say we should be alarmed because those drugs are often unnecessary.
They're really a chemical lobotomy because that's what they do in the brain.
The list of those named in Jim Gottstein's lawsuit is long. More than a dozen child psychiatrists, health agencies, state officials, and pharmacies that include Walmart, Fred Meyer, and Safeway.
I mean, 18-year-olds are having heart attacks from these drugs.
Jim Gottstein says he's tried to get the state and Alaska psychiatrists to use more restraint. He says that they're using powerful drugs on children that are intended for adults.
People put on these drugs have a life expectancy of 25 years shorter than the general population. These drugs are so harmful that they literally kill people.
A lot of times it's easier to medicate someone and just kind of have them go numb than to actually help them process all of these emotions.
Candace Tucker was in foster care for 3 years and believes her social workers and doctors relied too heavily on drugs.
I remember every medication I've ever been on. Abilify, Risperdal, Trazodone, and benzotropine for the side effects.
Just a few of more than a dozen drugs she no longer takes and feels she never needed. Candace Tucker believes an antidepressant she was prescribed made her suicidal.
It angers me because there are harmful side effects to these medications. They cause health problems. Half of them aren't even recommended to be used on someone under the age of 18, yet they're being prescribed to 4-year-olds.
Jim Gottstein believes foster children are one of the largest groups of children that are over-medicated in Alaska. He says the goal of the lawsuit is to stop this practice.
Children and youth in foster care basically have no rights. I mean, they're at the whim of the bureaucracy.
We haven't been able to get numbers in terms of how many youth in foster care are on psychiatric medications, and I think that might be because the state doesn't know, and so this is an opportunity for them to look into it.
For now, those named in the lawsuit are largely silent, saying the litigation against them prevents them from discussing the accusations.
It's a huge betrayal of the trust that we've placed in the psychiatrists.
Hello, world, and welcome to Aim to Purpose, the radio show. I am your host, Louise Hicks.
And I am your co-host, Kennon Mason, and I want to say, as always, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone listening and watching Aim to Purpose, the radio show, as we bring you another live broadcast here at Global Voice Broadcasting. And we have another special guest for you today, as our topic of today is psychiatric drugging of foster children, needed reforms in America. And our guest today is Sonya Muhammad, marriage and family counselor.
And Sonya has a great background in this subject, and she has a lot of expertise in this subject. And as you saw at the top of the show, the video clip, so it's the people in America are waking up now, and that's a good thing, because we can see by that clip what is going on here. And this is long overdue. We need reform, and it's really long overdue, because our legislators appear to have lost their minds, many of them, on what is going on, even when it's being brought to their attention. And we're going to talk about some of that, because too many people are walking around now as really like medicine cabinets, and these drugs are ruining lives. They're killing people, and it's an atrocity. It's actually what I would call criminal here in America. And we've been exploring this subject, and we're going to continue. And as you all are aware, this month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It's also Domestic Violence Month. And one of our viewers brought it to my attention that is injured by Psychiatry Awareness Month, or Latrogenic Illness Month. Awareness Month.
Wow.
And I had not heard of that. I wasn't aware of that until Darius, one of our viewers, brought it to my attention, because he too was injured by psychiatric medication, not through a psychiatrist, but through, I believe it was a neurologist, because he was diagnosed with, maybe you have heard and maybe some haven't heard, Tourette syndrome.
Tourette syndrome, yes.
And Ken can tell you a little bit more about that syndrome, but it happened because of psychiatric medications that were given to Darius, and it caused him to become disabled. And I really thank you, Darius, if you're listening, for bringing this to my attention, because I wasn't aware that there was this injured by Psychiatry Awareness Month. And now we can throw that in with the others, because Darius is also an advocate about bringing awareness to this syndrome that I wasn't aware of, Tourette syndrome, which is some type of twitching syndrome, and it causes violent outbursts and others. And this medication caused him to have a disability. And this could have been avoided had these doctors been more attentive to what they were prescribing to Darius. And also, I'd like to share with you to go on my Facebook page, and you can find a link to where Darius has written a song that he's sharing on Facebook. And if you go on facebook.com/Louise Hicks 51, you can find that link to Darius' song. And it's a great song. It's called The Eternal Sorrow. And it's really a great instrumental that he's created. And I wanted to share something else with you. I went to a retreat, and that retreat was great. It was facilitated by Jewel Diamond Taylor, who is an international speaker, keynote speaker. She's an author, and she, it was just a great, dynamic, very powerful retreat put on by her in Malibu, California. And she's an internationally acclaimed keynote speaker and author, and it was so empowering because she brought women together to celebrate sisterhood, and it was fun-filled. It was amazing. It was 2 days of joy, peace, happiness, healing, enlightenment, with lots of love. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed it to the max. And I just wanted to share. If you want to see pictures of that, you can also go to my Facebook page that I just gave, and you can share and see the album.
What's the name of the facility?
It's called Serra, Serra Retreat Center, and it's in Malibu, California. That's where we had 2 days of glorious spiritual enrichment and enlightenment. And Jewel Diamond Taylor is she's a joy. She embraced all of us with love, and she shared so many of her the various types of the various types that she used to facilitate her workshops and seminars. She shared lots of activities. These activities were awesome. They were fun, and they were healing, and it was all with love and affection. And there were women from out of state, Wisconsin, where else? I believe, Virginia, Idaho. It was just great. It was great, and I met lots of great people there. And I just wanted to share that with you. And if you ever have an opportunity to go on a retreat, Sarah was just beautiful. The landscape, everything about it was beautiful.
Yeah, the location of it is in the hills near the waters of the Pacific Ocean.
Yes.
So you get to overlook all of the scenery that is Los Angeles County and the Pacific Ocean. So you get a nice view, because I had my daughter go with us to drop her off. And my daughter loves the outdoors anyway, so she got a kick out of going out into the little energy maze that they had out in the dirt area that they had out in near the walkway.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So we had a great time, and I'm going to let Ken say a few things, and then we're going to take a commercial break and come back and go right into our guest with Sonya Muhammad.
Yeah, Sonya Muhammad is our guest today. Just really quick, I've been, for the entire month of October, I've been doing this challenge to everyone around the world, all of our Aim to Purpose listeners, because it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Many countries around the world, including America, acknowledge Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And the challenge, just really quick before I get to this one article here, Say No to Chemo Challenge. And we all need to know the truth and the history of chemotherapy or chemical therapy and how it was introduced into pharmacopoeia as a, quote, therapy. Get true information about radiation challenge, which the challenge is to get the true information about radiation, because we've been told that if you go in these microwave ovens that I call them in the airport, it's safe. And they tell women if you get mammograms that it will be a safe early detection mechanism for detecting cancer. The truth of the matter is that all mammograms given will raise your chances of developing cancer from 2 to 5%. Next, the perjury of cancer surgery. And I talked about this last week about how tumors are actually protecting you, and they're your savior, not the enemy. And last, feel-good emotions and live nutrition heighten innate intuition. We've been programmed to believe that there is no cure anywhere in sight for cancer, but however, we see that all other many places around the world where there are medical doctors and naturopathic doctors and physicians and other healers in other different modalities that are giving people the tools so people can heal their cancers on their own. Doctors don't heal anything, people do. And when you give the people the tools and the ammunition and the nutrient density foods and show people that clearing their negative emotional challenges will reduce your chances of ever developing cancer. So those are all of my challenges. And with that said, I go to this first, this headline here, and this is from pbs.org. And many of you may have seen this on television. It's been all across television today. Headline: Bacon, hot dogs, and processed meats cause cancer, World Health Organization says. And it goes on to say, I have the article right here, it says bacon, sausage, and other processed meats are now ranked alongside cigarettes and asbestos as known carcinogens. The World Health Organization announced today processed meats cause cancer, and red meat likely causes cancer, the health agency says in a new report. The new investigation involved 22 scientists who were invited by the World Health Organization International Agency for Research on Cancer to assess the association between more than 16 types of cancer and the consumption of red meat and processed meat. Now, this test was done over the course of 7 days in early October, examined more than 800 epidemiological studies from the United States, Europe, Japan, Australia, and elsewhere. The World Health Organization group classify consumption of processed meat as carcinogenic to humans. Red meat carries a slightly low risk, the group says, but it's still probably carcinogenic to humans, alongside from the strong mechanistic evidence related to colorectal cancer. The consumption of red meat was also positively associated with pancreatic and with prostate cancer. And the kicker here at the end, it says processed meat now falls into group 1, meaning it ranks as high as tobacco smoking, the most dangerous variant of human papillomavirus and asbestos exposure in terms of causing cancer. Red meat lands in group 2A with inorganic lead. So here's another more proof that you definitely are what you choose to eat. And if you choose to continue to eat products, I don't even call it food, I call it products such as bacon, hot dogs, other processed meats, you do run the risk of developing cancer over time.
And that's great news, because it was on the news too, the local news here in California where we broadcast from. It was in the news. And also, just quickly, and then we're going to go to a commercial break and come back with our guests. There was a docu-series on for 9 nights, Ty Bollinger, The Truth About Cancer, A Global Quest. And I watched all of that docu-series, and it was highly informative. It was an eye-opener about cancer and the causes. He had medical doctors, he had acupuncturist doctors, chiropractic doctors, nurses,
every modality you can
think of, who brought forth such vital information. So if you get an opportunity, go on YouTube and search for that, Ty Bollinger, Bollinger, and that's Ty, Ty.
And as always, the number to call if you want to call in on this subject, psychiatric drugging of foster children, 1-323-522-5482 from anywhere around the world, 1-323-522-5482. And we're going to come right back with our special guest, Sonya Muhammad, for this topic, needed reforms in America. So we'll be right back. Don't you go nowhere. This edition of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, is brought to you by L. Hicks Consulting Services. When you want the best in business coaching, life coaching, or perhaps your organization, business, or company is in need of a dynamic speaker for an upcoming workshop or seminar, contact Louise Hicks for L. Hicks Consulting Services at 1-562-310-1495. From anywhere around the world, that's 1-562-310-1495. For more information about Louise Hicks and her consulting services, visit her website at www.louisehicks.biz. Again, that's www.louisehicks.biz. Or call 1-562-310-1495. L. Hicks Consulting Services, where professionalism is top priority.
Hello, world, again. I am Louise Hicks, your host of Aim to Purpose, the radio show, along with my son, Kennon Wesley Mason, and as my co-host. And we're going to go ahead and introduce our special guest, and so we can get into this topic today that's well needed for reform, the psychiatric drugging of foster children.
Yeah, Sonya, there we go. Sonya Muhammad is a marriage, family, and child counselor and life coach. She received her bachelor's degree in theater arts from Columbia College in Chicago, Illinois, her master's degree in marriage, family, and child counseling from Pacific Oaks College in Pasadena, California, and her educational counseling certification from the University of Laverne in Laverne, California. Ms. Muhammad has devoted over 25 years to working with children who have difficult behaviors and other life struggles, while providing their parents with parent education and support. Ms. Muhammad has provided counseling services in domestic violence shelters, and she coaches domestic violence victims in an effort to provide them with prevention and intervention strategies for self-awareness and safety. Ms. Muhammad is an adjunct professor at the University of Laverne, and she has served as a counselor coach in a variety of school districts and county agencies settings working with children K through 12 and their families. Ms. Muhammad has extensive experience in providing a variety of counseling and educational services to foster youth, and it was during her 12 years with Los Angeles County Office of Education Foster Youth Services that Ms. Muhammad became aware of and concerned about the massive psychotropic drugging of children who reside in out-of-home placements. This particular interest in the psychotropic drugging of foster children who have no voice and no power is directly encouraged and sustained by her collaborations with other professionals and professional organizations who have similar interests and concerns. She currently has a book available on Kindle titled Mirror, Mirror 2, a textbook or a text workbook for women who wish to heal the wounds and move beyond domestic violence. And her next book, Wake Up and Smell the Cocoa, which is a brief handbook exposing the childhood ADHD myth and the dangers of psychotropic drugs. Let's have a warm Aim to Purpose welcome. She's on the phone to our special guest, Miss Sonya Muhammad.
Hello, Sonya. How are you?
Well, I am fine, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we're happy that you accepted the invitation. Thank you for coming on the show to share your expertise, because you really have it. I mean, after hearing your bio and all of the experience you've had, the exposure, we are so happy to have you to share that information with us. And I know you heard the video clip from the attorney, about the attorney, I should say, Jim Gottstein, and it was powerful. And I'm so happy that we have a voice for these foster children now. The law project for psychiatric rights that he's involved in, that's amazing. I'm just happy to hear that, and I know you're doing a lot of things to involve the public and bring awareness. So how did you get involved in this in the first place, wanting to have this passion and compassion for these foster care children?
Well, it is kind of a strange story in a sense. I was basically, as you mentioned in the introduction, which thank you for the very nice introduction, in my programs that I have studied in, pretty much anyone that is in the field of psychology, psychiatry, clinical social work, school psychology, any of those types of professions, we have all been introduced to a book called the DSM, which is an acronym for the Diagnostic Statistical Manual.
Yes.
And within this book, well, to put it shortly, I would say this is like the Bible for people in the mental health industry. And at the time that I was studying and when I became employed and what have you, I had no reason to question the book. This is what everyone uses, and so it was. And one day I was in a grocery store in Los Angeles and was leaving out, saw a rack. You know how they usually have racks at the exits by
Right.
Exits with the housing and car rental, whatever it is, books on buying cars and
Right.
and renting properties and whatever thing it is, and buying homes and what have you. And there was this booklet that was very similar, but the title on it, the lead page said the latest, and then I looked at the subtitle, and it says Psychiatric Abuse, Inventing Diseases for High-Profit Drug Cures.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked it up. I picked up several of them. It was free. And I took it home, and I read the article. And the article was written by a Dr. Fred Bauman, who has been a pioneer in trying to let the public know that there is something very wrong with what is going on with this diagnostic system and with the prescribing of the psychotropic drugs, and particularly to children. So after I read it, at that time I was working for a Los Angeles County agency, and I became an advocate for it because I began to see that so many of the children that I worked with were on one or more of these drugs, and we weren't seeing any results. It wasn't as though we were saying, okay, well, they're taking the drugs, and so they're doing really well. In fact, we were seeing quite the opposite. So I started addressing the issue at staff meetings and in-services, and you can imagine that it was not well received ever.
That's what I was going to say. I know the reaction wasn't positive toward you.
Not ever. In fact, the reaction was usually like, "Oh Lord, is she going to say that something
right.
again?
Here she comes again.
Who invited her?
Right.
She's back again." So that was pretty much always what I received. There might have been one or two people that were personal friends of mine that were willing to listen. They were also colleagues, but no one of a position that was really able to do something about it in any way was ever interested to that degree. So after meeting Dr. Bauman, I was introduced to the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, that is CCHRINT.org, and they have been doing extensive work for some years on the whole psychiatric industry and how fraudulent it is.
And it's very fraudulent.
I became involved, just totally fraudulent. And that seems to be the word that is avoided. So you will hear some discussion. What I did hear in the foster care system amongst maybe representatives from the Department of Children and Family Services or the Department of Mental Health or your local unified school districts, they might be willing to say, well, there's a possibility that we're over-drugging the kids. But no one is willing to say, I've never heard anyone say it is totally fraudulent and we should not be drugging them at all. So that became my mission almost in life for that time, was to try to get that message out to the public. But it is amazing how ill-received that message has become. And so I was very happy to connect with you, Louise, again. We discovered that we have talked some years ago.
Absolutely.
To find out that there is still someone that has this mission in their heart. And I am 100% behind you or next to you or wherever you want me to be.
Next to me. Next
side
to me.
by
Side by
the
side.
best place.
Side by
in order
side.
to get this message out, because it's horrendous, and I have seen some very horrendous things happen to children as a result of them taking the drugs. And now that they're reaching back even into the cradle, almost, this is definitely criminal, and something needs to happen in order to stop these offenses against children.
And something is going to happen, Sonya, because it's amazing how you and I came full circle and realized this morning we used to talk about this very thing, and we lost touch, hadn't spoken in over 10 years. And I knew I had heard the name, and then you said you'd heard my name. And lo and behold, as we started brainstorming, we realized we used to talk all the time over 10 years ago about this very subject and wanted to do something about it then. So the timing is now, because we have a global awareness now where people are changing. It's coming into an awakening by the masses of people, and there is no stopping it now. People have a different mindset.
Yeah.
And it's been over a decade since we talked, and we're going to be side by side in this, believe me. And because our children don't have a voice, as the attorney said up at on the clip, they don't have a voice in the foster care system. And they need a voice. And how, with you working in the system all this time, how do these children from foster care end up on all these drugs?
Well, I know that we are limited on time, so I'll try to keep it as brief as possible.
I know we could talk about this all day.
All day. Okay, but basically, to keep it relatively simple, they have two paths that they can enter in. One is through the caregiver, who is the overseer of the home that they reside in, and the other is their school. So if a child, let's say, for example, a child is placed in a foster home, group home, and they have some type of behavior that the provider is concerned about, and they share it with the child social worker, et cetera, and a decision is made that the child does need to go see a psychiatrist. So then the child goes to see the psychiatrist, and there is a form that the Department of Children and Family Services has where the psychiatrist completes the form, states their diagnosis, states their recommended prescriptions, and it used to be that form then would have to go to the Children's Court judge, and Children's Court is located in, Edelman's Children's Court is located in Monterey Park, California. And so it used to be that the form would have to go to the judge, and the judge would have some type of medical staff in court to review the diagnosis, review the prescriptions, and sanction whether or not it's a yay or a nay, and usually it's a yay. And the Children's Court judge would approve it, and then the child could be placed on the drugs. Now, that was one route. And I mentioned to you earlier in a conversation, Louise, that I spoke with a group home manager not too long ago, and she said now they can just take the child to the psychiatrist and get the prescription filled and start administering the drugs without it going through the Children's Court judge. Now, I don't know that to be true. I did not call and do any research on it to verify it, but I was stunned to hear that. The other route is through the child's school. So if nothing is recommended from the group home or the foster home that they're staying in, then if there are any types of behaviors or in schools, they'll call anything a disorder. So it can be that the child is not socializing well enough, or the child is not doing well academically, or whatever, and they have a ton of diagnosis for these behaviors. And so then they'll refer the child to a school psychologist. And the school psychologists, and any of them that might be listening, I don't mean to be insulting in any way, but the testing that the children receive is just a joke.
That's right.
Of course it's a joke.
Basically
That's
what
right.
you're saying, pardon me, dear?
I said, of course it's a joke.
Yeah, it's a joke. And the reason I know that to be, now I didn't just know this on my own, but one day the job that I had with the Los Angeles County Office of Education required that we always get school records on the children that we were working with, because that tends to have been a problem before the formation of our organization. Children were in foster care, and they were taking the same grades over and over again because their academic records were lost, and this and that and that. So that's another story. But one day I requested records for one of my kids, and whoever sent the records, the registrar, just sent me the whole, what they call a CUME file. A CUME file is something that every child in public school starts with kindergarten and goes straight through the high school, follows them all the way through high school.
I'm familiar with
that.
So
they sent me the whole thing, and in this packet was the testing from the school psychologist. And I said, oh, well, I wasn't supposed to receive this, but I looked through it anyway. And I was just amazed, because it was like drawings, it was matching numbers, it was matching shapes, and there were things like, well, if you were asked, the child was asked to draw a house, and if you didn't put a chimney, or if you did put a chimney on the roof, then that meant you were angry.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. And this is considered the information that now from that point will go to a IEP committee, and that IEP stands for the Individualized Educational Plan. So the child is now referred to the IEP committee, which is also, as far as I'm concerned, a farce, because the whole point in having an IEP meeting is for concerned persons, the social worker, the child's parents, caregivers, teachers, principals, whomever is involved, to come together and take a look at the results of the school psychologists of their testings and determine what would be the proper approach to helping this child. But in many cases, and the schools know this, but in many cases, the IEP is already prepared when it comes to the meeting, and it's just a matter of getting signatures at the end of the meeting and moving on with whatever in the heck they decided to write on there. There would probably be a lot of school districts say, oh, no, we don't do that, but some of you do, because I was sitting right there next to the person who had the IEP already prepared, and I'm asking, how does this document already completed? And this is the whole purpose of us coming together, is to make these decisions about what we think is best for this child and complete this form together and then sign it. So it is such a disrespect to the life of the child until, to me, that's what makes it extra criminal, is that we're going through the motions of pretending as though we care and pretending as though we're doing the things that are in the best interest of the child, and that is not always so, and in most cases it's not so at all.
That's what I was going to say. In most cases it's not.
Yes.
That's amazing.
That's so unfortunate. Yes, and I know that there will be a lot of people in the profession or in the school districts or whatever that would beg to differ and would say, oh, that's terrible she's saying that. But, it doesn't matter. It's the truth.
Well, it doesn't matter because it is the truth. And our show is about bringing awareness to the public so that individuals can reach their highest calling. And we are about real talk, real purpose, and real people, and this is the only way we're going to get the message out. And because there are so many people in the public that are brainwashed, they've been bamboozled by mainstream media, we are bamboozled by our politicians because many of them are corrupt, and we are bamboozled by the psychiatric industry. We are bamboozled by the pharmaceutical industry, the drug companies, and it boils down to two words, I should say, greed and profit. And it's unfortunate because these people that are making these recommendations, are they clinicians? I know you said they go to the psychologist, but before then, these are teachers and so forth that are recommending that these children go because they're just being children, right? And they don't even try to get to the root cause of what could be going on in the home with the child that you could fix without a drug.
That's right.
Exactly. Well, and the issue for foster kids is that usually the procedure is for a foster child, they're not just removed, although there might be some who will disagree with this, but for the most part, children are removed from the home because of some reason.
Absolutely.
So it is because of physical abuse or sexual abuse or emotional abuse or neglect or something. There is a reason why they're being removed. Now, there are some people out there that do have a position where they feel as though many of the kids are being removed unnecessarily. I'm not sure what those situations are, but I know I have had kids that I have tried desperately to get them out of the home because of the situation they were in. And I had one of they called them screeners. When you call the child abuse hotline, you have to speak with a screener, and then they forward it on to Child Protective Services. I had a screener tell me, I said, well, what else do I need to do to get this child to someplace safe? And he told me blood and guts. I'll never forget those words. So
blood
when people claim that children are removed from the home unnecessarily, I don't know about that situation, because usually when the children are removed, something has happened to them, and it is better for them to come out of that home. So now you take this child out of their home, and you place them into a home with strange people they do not know. First of all, you bag up all of their things disrespectfully in a big green garbage bag.
Yeah.
And you bring them to this place that they don't know these people. You put them in rooms with children who have similar situations that they have. Sometimes they're scared out of their wits about being where they are.
And you can't
Many
blame
times
them.
the siblings you can't. I would be.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
many times
The child
siblings,
for being
they're
frightened.
split up, so they're brothers and sisters. If they have brothers and sisters, many times they all go different directions. This child does not know what is going on. They don't know if they're going home again. They don't know if they're going to see their family ever again. They have no idea what's going on. And, of course, as you said earlier, they have no voice and they have no power.
Right.
So
That's
they
sad.
have to do exactly what they are told. Now, that's where a lot of the problem comes in because, okay, so you take this child and you put them in the home. Now, I'll have to say that I have had some group homes in my caseload that were very, very nice. But I have also had some group homes on my caseload that were deplorable.
I believe it.
And if you had to ask me to stay there overnight or tell me that I had to stay there for a questionable amount of time, I would have cried all night too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so sometimes I had said, some people need to go, and they need to go stay in one of these group homes for a week, and then they'll see what these children are up against.
Right. Why?
You stay there.
I'm always in the position where the psychiatrist should go to these foster care places, because usually most of the psychiatrists, they're not going to put their children on these
Of course they're not.
on these psychotropic drugs, because they know what the effects will be on their minds. And when you take a child out of its comfort zone, the emotional effects will start to be conjured up, because now you're taking the child away from where their comfort is, with their families, with their brothers, with their sisters. And then you take them and diagnose them with something that's in that diagnostic manual, which we've talked about several times on this show.
That they make up.
And they create these diagnoses, or they create the names for an emotional breakdown that's happening because you've taken the child out of their home, out of their school, put them in with strangers, other children that may be even worse off than them.
And
Well,
that's a problem.
Interesting
So
you would say that, because sometimes in a group home is usually ran by staff. In a foster home, there is usually a foster mom or that's present in the home, you know, at all times. But in a group home, it's ran by hourly staff. So if you could pass a fingerprint test, you probably can be a staff in a group home.
Right.
And many of them have the attitude, this is my job. I am here for 8 hours. That's what I'm here to do. Pick them up, take them back to home, fix breakfast, fix dinner, whatever thing it is, take them to the doctor, take them to the dentist, this and that, and that's my job. And this is who they live with. So they're not being raised by anyone. They're being raised by an institution, which is a very sad situation.
They're just being watched over, pretty much.
Exactly.
That's all it
And
is,
pretty
Sonya,
much-
and that's what's so sad about it, because now this is a problem with the drugging, because it sounds like these kids have a double whammy. First, they're being raised in some of these homes with adults that have no training themselves on how to handle behavior and get to the root of the problem, and then they're taken to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and their first diagnosis is to here's this pill, this is going to solve the problem.
Right.
And so what why is the drugging such a problem? I know we've elaborated on it some, but give us a little bit more information on that and some of the things you've done to address these concerns.
Well, something you just said, getting to the root of the problem, that is not really their concern. From where I sit, the real concern is to shut them up and shut them down.
Right.
That's the real concern.
That's it.
Any behaviors, like as you said also, that most of the time the staff is not trained in the behavioral sciences or child development or education or anything of that sort. And so the whole idea is just don't give us any problems when you're in this house, is the idea. When children get to be teenagers, of course, most teenagers are rebellious in some kind of way in their natural biological homes. And so many times the children get if they reach those teenage years, and they do become hostile about certain things. Well, they're actually waking up to certain things, and they're understanding that they're supposed to be able to call their social workers, and many times they can't, or if they can, they can't reach them, they can't talk with them, they don't get calls back in a timely manner, because they're trying to find out now what's going on here. When am I going home? What do I have to do to go home? Where's my brothers and sisters? That kind of thing. And then they're in the home with other young people who have similar issues. So sometimes that is a very stressful situation. In fact, I said to a social worker once, I said, at 5 o'clock or whenever it is, when you guys get off, you get an opportunity to go home and go to your nice home and drive home in your nice car and have your nice dinner with your nice family.
That's right.
But in the meantime, this child, now you're off duty, so now this child is at the mercy of whoever is in this house with them. And so whatever goes on, your only recommendation to the child is just try to keep the peace. Don't say anything.
Yeah, just shut up and shut them down, as you said. And what we need to do, Sonya, we need to take a commercial break quickly, and then we're going to come back, and we want to answer a couple of more questions about the what you've done to address it and the reforms that are needed in the 8 minutes or so that we have left. So let's take a commercial break, and we're going to come back and answer those questions about what you've done to address the concerns and the reforms that are needed.
Yes, Sonya Muhammad is our guest today. It's Global Voice Broadcasting, the show Aim to Purpose, the radio show. We'll be right back. Hello, world. Hey, it's the 1-year anniversary of Aim to Purpose, the radio show. So first, we thank the staff at Global Voice Broadcasting for the platform and the opportunity. Go to gvbstudios.com/show/A2P. Next, we thank our wonderful guests that have graced the airwaves of Aim to Purpose over the past year, like Dr. Caldwell B. Esselstyn from the documentary Forks Over Knives, Nazir Alim Bey with his soon-to-be-released documentary entitled Melanin, the God Particle. From the Citizens Commission on Human Rights, Dr. Jeffrey A. Shaler, and Professor Baron K. Brown, who's become a regular on the show. Internationally, we've had guests such as Bridget Nkuna and Sarah Jane Farrell from South Africa, award-winning author F.T. Camargo from Brazil, Brenda Pierce, the Empowered Nurse from Canada, double Olympic medalist from the British cycling team Brian Steele, and many other great guests that have openly shared their knowledge, humor, wit, and wisdom with the A2P universe. And most important, we thank you, the listening and viewing audience, for tuning in each and every Monday. Information is power, and the more our audience grows, the more open minds that'll receive the information, which makes all of us powerful. So we encourage all of you to spread the word about Aim to Purpose, the radio show. Lastly, if you know someone with a product, business, or foundation that's interested in advertising as a sponsor for the show, contact A2P host Louise Hicks at louisehicks.biz or Shamika Brown at divinebrownmedia.com. Be a part of the A2P movement, as there is always power in numbers of like minds that multiply. And follow us on social media at Aim to Purpose, #A2P. Once again, thank you all from Aim to Purpose, the radio show.
And hello, world, again. We thank you all for tuning in with this great conversation we're having with Sonya Muhammad, marriage and family counselor, author, and life coach, activist. And the topic is psychiatric drugging of foster kids, foster children, needed reforms in America. And when we went to the break, we were asking Sonya when we come back to address her concerns and what reforms are needed in order to help these voiceless children. Mm-hmm. So go ahead,
Thank
Sonya.
You. I did want to go back just for a second to address the question, why is drugging the children a problem?
Yes.
Many of these drugs, in fact, most of the drugs, if you look them up, most of the drugs are antidepressants.
Yes.
Right.
Or antipsychotics. And so it's like, the children are neither of these things. Why are they taking these? And most of the children are on more than one. Many of these
Yes.
drugs cause them to be suicidal. Many of them create brain atrophy, where their brains are actually shrinking, according to Dr. Bauman.
Oh, yes.
In fact, he refers to it as making normal children abnormal.
Yep.
That's what they're
I
doing,
had a child who was a beautiful little girl, about maybe 7 years old. Lost contact with her, found her, went to the facility where she was staying at that time. She had become grossly obese. I did not even recognize her. It prevents them from going into the military because the drugs test out as regular street drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So if they are trying, once they turn 18 and they're transitioning out of the system, if they try to drug test for a job somewhere or something, they can't pass the drug test, and that's with the military and other private entities.
Wow.
And even with transitional housing, now I don't know if it's different today, but back when I was working with the county, I retired in 2012. A transitional housing was available to children 18 years of age that were leaving the system but going into a transitional housing facility, which would still be paid for by the Department of Children and Family Services, but they couldn't even get into that if they were on psychotropic drugs. And I would think to myself, well, they didn't ask to be on this,
Right.
you know, and now you're giving them a double whammy. The fact that they don't qualify for any more of your services. That is not okay.
Oh, yeah, and that's
So,
by
and
design. It's
to your
all by
next-
design. It's all by design.
It's all by design.
Yes.
So what
And-
have I done to address it? Well, pretty much what I'm doing now. I've been talking about it for a very long time. And as we said in the earlier part of the broadcast, not very many people are legitimately interested in hearing about it. If it is seemingly socially correct to listen to it, you know, but to be really legitimately interested where they say this is awful, we should be outraged
Right.
by this happening to children, and we are not. The society is not. Just listening to the link, the presentation that you did at the very beginning, your video, $5,500 for medication. The taxpayers have no idea that children are on 2, 3, sometimes 4 of these medications at one time. And so you're taking an antidepressant, you're taking an antipsychotic, and so that it's understandable that they're all over the place with these drugs and their systems as such. So I have been working with CCHR, the Citizen Commission on Human Rights, CCHRINT.org, and they frequently invite me to come and speak and address audiences on the matter and talk about it from the position of education. But otherwise, there's not a lot of interest in it. What I have found is that people are willing to talk about the over-medicating of kids, but they're not willing to talk about it being completely fraudulent and that we need to stop medicating them at all. They will not have that discussion. So what needs to happen, I think, well, the problem to me is systemic. It goes back to our professional training, so that would, and this would be huge because it would require like all of your colleges and universities that offer majors in psychology and psychiatry and clinical social work and marriage, family, child therapy and other related professions, they would have to revamp their entire programs to address
And that
it in
would
this
cost
kind of way.
that would cost millions and millions of dollars that they don't want to pay for.
Well,
they are not going to pay for.
No,
It would
that
cause
is so true.
Call for revision of textbooks and and the positions in the textbooks. So we could pretty much go from Miami, Florida to Seattle, Washington, and the textbooks, if not the same, they'll be very, very similar.
Of course
so the
they
message is the same or similar across the nation, probably across the world.
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
so the key
we would
is
need
to
visit the
educate.
evaluation. I'm sorry, dear.
I said the key is to educate the masses.
The key is to educate, exactly. To revisit the evaluation process. People need to know when we're saying that your child is going to be evaluated, that the school counselors, not counselor, but the school psychologist evaluation is very, very limited. It's very, very subjective, and so is that of the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist is only sitting there talking to the child, and from their dialogue with the child, they'll make the decision that this is the diagnosis. And so that's very, very subjective as well. So if it's a day that the child doesn't feel like talking, and many times foster youth don't feel like talking because they talk to so many people all the time about the same thing, that will be a diagnosis, that they were anti-something or they were something. And according to Dr. Fred Bauman, what we're doing is just taking regular human emotions and calling it disorders and diseases, and that is so not true.
That's right.
And it's certainly
and that's
so
true.
The education piece is so very, very important. And in the foster care system, it might help, I don't know, but there is also a monetary advantage for group homes and foster homes to have children in their homes that have diagnosis and have to take medications. There's a monetary incentive for them to take this child because the behaviors may be difficult. And so maybe if the monetary incentives were removed, but then there would be a problem, I'm sure DCFS would say, but then how will we place these children? Because they had difficult behaviors, and so the foster homes and the group homes don't have to take the child. So then what do we do with them if they don't take them? So we give them a little extra money so that they will take the children and keep them in their homes. And sorry to say that our school districts also receive extra funding for their children that are diagnosed and labeled special education children. And so they have an incentive as well, and they certainly would never admit it, but there is an incentive behind that as well. And even though the government has tried to put something in place to prevent them from doing that, it is still being done.
And you nailed it. You hit the nail on the head, because it's about educating the public to make us aware, as well as once you get educated, then you can go after policy reform through legislative law. And that's where we are coming from, educating, going through this process, because deep pockets cannot compete with deep minds. Once the public is aware of this, the politicians will be thrown out if they do not conform to what their constituents are addressing them to do, which is change the policies on the psychotropic drugs and the psychiatry industry, the educational institution, because it's all tied in together, because there's so much corruption.
Oh, yeah.
And we in the few minutes we have left, let's get some final thoughts from you, Sonya, and how we can reach you, and then Ken can say some final thoughts.
Okay, well, I can be reached at my email address is Sonya Muhammad, SonyaMuhammad @gmail.com. And as I shared with you earlier, Louise, I'm just not a techie person, and so I do have a Facebook page, but I apologize. There's more people on my page than me. I'm learning, and I will get to that eventually.
Okay.
But what I am concerned about, and what I would like people to leave with, is that we have to stop being afraid, and we have to develop a higher level of consciousness, where these things that are happening in our society that are very, very real, that we're willing to come out and do something about it. See, back in the day of King, when those things were going on, people were willing to hit the streets and march and walk and whatever it was, boycott and all these things. But we've become a more sophisticated society now, so we don't have time for that. We got to get together to work, and then we got to get home, we got to get the kids, we got to get them to football practice and whatever it is, baton twirling lessons and this and that and the other. So we don't really have time for that. But we're going to have to start making time. So I think part of the issue is to get into the hearts and minds of the people, to get them inspired to want to start demanding that something change around here, and that, as you said earlier, the politicians that we have in place, don't keep voting for them and you don't know what they're going to do, or when you see that they're not really doing anything,
vote them
vote
out.
Them back in again.
They're career politicians.
Have been in those positions for years.
So we must vote them out. And you made a profound statement when you said we have to come to a higher level of consciousness.
That's it.
That's powerful,
That's
Sonya.
it.
And thank you for that. And
That's
thank
it.
you for coming on the show today. We'll have you back next season. And we appreciate all of this vital information that you've shared with us to help bring us to that higher level of consciousness. And did you have something you wanted to say?
Just
Ken?
real quick, I agree wholeheartedly with Sonya. We have to be fearless when it comes to bringing this type of information to the public. We have to get educated. Information is power. The more information you get on these subjects, the more parents get information on the effects of the psychotropic drugging, it does suppress a child's emotions, especially when you're taking 4 and 5 different drugs at one time. It makes the neurons in your brain go haywire. You're basically short-circuiting your neurological system.
Yes,
with
you
every
are.
single drug that you take, especially the psychotropic drugs, because they go straight for the brain first. The one thing that you need to raise your higher state of consciousness.
That's so true. And with that
Exactly.
being said, thank you, Sonya. We're going to have you back. We can get
You're
deeper
so
into
welcome.
this
Thank
subject.
you so much for having me.
You are welcome. And with that said, always remember your power lies within you, and let it loose
Let it
until
loose.
next week.